Welcome back, everyone, to another season of Hail Yes. We are wrapping up the month of July here. It is July 30th as we're recording. Probably going to be the 31st by the time you guys hear this one. But man, football season is fast approaching. Day one of camp for Michigan football is here. So perfect time to hit the ground running here in another season of a podcast with Tony Garcia. I am Andrew Burkle. As you guys know, of course. Tony, how's your summer been, man? It's been pretty crazy, I think, like mine, right?
Yeah, I was just putting in the notes here. Since we spoke to everybody, you've gotten married. We both went to Europe for multiple weeks. You had to chop down a tree over your house. I had to replace my AC. I was in Vegas for media days, got off to New York, going up north for a tasting for my own wedding. I mean, it's kind of what summer's supposed to be, but definitely ready to get back to it. Every time you hit media days, that just feels like about a week too soon. But now that it has passed and it's the following week and you see the social media posts and the team is reporting for camp, it's like, all right, it's about that time. Let's get it going.
My takeaway from what you just told me is racking up the Delta points this summer, Tony. You gotta have some miles, hopefully some free trips in your future here.
Yeah, we're trying to keep climbing. I got a honeymoon next year, so it would be nice if that was at least somewhat covered. So yeah. Marriott stays, Delta points.
Beautiful. It's all good stuff.
That's the name of the game. If you're a
100%.
journalist, that's what we talk about. Like when we're at when I'm at a press conferences or this or that, we're all just exchanging notes on what hotels we're staying at, when we're getting in, when we're getting out. It's the equivalent of it's pretty rainy today, or it's not the heat, it's the humidity. That's sports journalism weather talk.
The water cooler talk of sports journalism is Delta points, or at least here in Michigan, Delta, because I feel like most of us fly out of Delta in Detroit. So anyways, quick reset here. Obviously we're super excited for football season. Reiner Saban, who you guys have obviously heard a million times on this podcast, he's going to be on Lions this year just because, they needed more help over there. And Reiner is as solid as it comes on football. And, when a team is going 15-2 in the regular season, it's hard to ignore. So Reiner is going to be all hands on deck with football in the Lions Ford Field this year instead of Michigan Stadium. So we might have him pop on because he still loves college football. So from here and there, we might have him say hi, check in, see what he's thinking, see what he's seeing from the college football perspective. But Reiner is mostly going to be on NFL duties. We're still trying to figure out if we're going to fill it full time, maybe with some other columnists, maybe a rotating staff of columnists coming in and out. And we're also going to try to shoot to have more guests just for a different perspective, because we like it or not, Tony and I unfortunately do see the game pretty similarly sometimes. So it is good to get a fresh perspective in there and see if we can give you guys some new looks as well. So yeah, lots to look forward to here once a week, the rest of the way, basically through basketball season. So Tony, you ready to start talking once a week here?
Yeah. And I'll just put out the caveat that should we need an emergency podcast, I don't know, maybe a final ruling from a committee on infractions comes down or sometime in August, or a starting quarterback is named, that sort of thing. There could be a couple double dips in here, especially when football and basketball are overlap in November and early December. But yeah, once a week, ready to get going. I thought it had been I knew it had been a handful of weeks. I didn't realize how long it had been. I meant since we last recorded. So that means we enjoyed our summer, did what we were supposed to do, and rejuiced, recharged, rejuvenated, whatever you want to use. We're ready.
Yeah. And I didn't feel as bad leaving our listeners stranded for as long, because I guess that a majority of our listeners are also Tigers fans, and 162 games basically since, it started in April, which is around the time we slowed down. There has been plenty to watch and listen for with those guys. Days of Roar, of course, Evan Petzold, our Tigers beat writer, doing a great job booting out podcast content over there. And the Tigers finally appear to be back in the right track after a bit of a stumble there for sure.
Yeah. And also last point before we really get going, we don't want to just put out podcasts for the sake of podcasts. A lot of times in the summer when the guys aren't meeting, you're coming up with lists, or you're doing this or that. And not to say the lists are bad. We might have a list later on in this episode, but it's really moving into the season, right? There are some, we've just spoken to players, to coaches. There's some tangible details and information that we can use to sort of move the narrative forward. So wanted to just take a little break, but no time like the present to talk Michigan football.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So the second half of the podcast, we're going to get into the title, which is basically realistic expectations for Michigan in 2025. It's been a roller coaster up from the national championship game back down to, 5-5 and looking like, oh boy, what's going on here, to 7-5, 8-5. You beat Ohio State. You beat Alabama in the bowl game. So where the heck does Michigan sit in 2025? We're going to go through the schedule and take a look at that. But first, we want to get into the position battles to pay attention to as much as you can. It's not like Lions training camp where we got Burkett out there giving observations every day, right? We're going to be following this a little more from afar. Tony would love to be there every day if he could. Unfortunately, that's just not the way college football works. So we're picking up breadcrumbs as we go. So we thought it'd be important to tell you guys what to be looking for. Obviously, if you watched last season, it starts and ends with the quarterback play and Bryce Underwood, the man that everyone's talking about, not just really in Ann Arbor, but one of the most talked about quarterbacks in the entire nation. So Tony, let's start with that. Obviously, quarterback is one of the 5 battles we're watching, right?
It's got to be the top battle that we're watching. And now it might not be as much of a battle as people thought it was going to be a few months ago over the winter, because Michigan, they did not want to have to do a quarterback carousel like they did a season ago, where really they had 3 quarterbacks, all of whom were rather underwhelming. So they were going to get the most talented freshman in the nation, 5-star, one of the highest rated recruits in the history of the program, obviously, in Bryce. And then someone like Mikey Keene, who came from Fresno State. But what people might underestimate a little bit is that his previous stop at UCF, Chip Lindsey, now Michigan football's offensive coordinator, was his OC in Orlando. So the two have worked together, and there is some already built-in chemistry there. And then another point that Sherrone Moore was liking to make when this past week in Las Vegas is that he was going through the entire roster, and nobody on the roster has played more snaps than Mikey Keene. He has played more than 2,000 college football snaps. And as a quarterback, I mean, like it or not, the fan base might be clamoring for Bryce Underwood, but 2,000 snaps is a massive head start. But the reason why I say it might not be quite the competition that we thought is because Mikey was hurt for all of spring. He did not take any snaps with the team during their 6-week spring session from late February, early March through April. And now it sounds like he was sort of back in the fold, getting into a few workouts here and there over the summer, and should be good to go for this fall camp. But Bryce Underwood got to work on his chemistry with Donovan McCulley, with Andrew Marsh, with Marlon Klein, with the offensive line, getting used to his cadence, all these little things, installing Chip's offense that everybody is now having to learn together. And so Mikey Keene, I mean, he's been a very solid quarterback, but it's all been at the group of 5 level. And his size, I mean, I think he might be listed as 5'11". I think that would probably be a little generous. He might be 5'10", 5'11", 185 pounds, something like that. Whereas Bryce Underwood is every bit of 6'3.5" or 6'4", and now 230 pounds. That is up 15 pounds from when he joined the program in December. And before anybody makes any of their jokes, his body fat percentage is down. And I mean, I was at a workout this summer with him in downtown Detroit, and I mean, he took his shirt off. I mean, the dude is shredded. I mean, he does not look like a quarterback, right? I mean, it's certainly not one who is still 17 as we speak. He turns 18 next month, which is just preposterous. So, I mean, that's where it starts. There are some other people who the coaches would like to mention in the mix. Jake Garcia, who just came in from East Carolina. Before that, he was at Missouri. He was at Miami. He was a top 50 prospect in the class of 2021. He has started in the Power 5 at Miami. So, I mean, there are tangibles to like there, but last year at East Carolina, I mean, he really just underwhelmed. Davis Warren is rehabbing from a torn ACL in the ReliaQuest Bowl game. So if he is available at some point this year, it's certainly not the start. And it's just hard to see him really cracking the rotation, frankly. And then last but not least, Jaden Davis, who was at one point the heir apparent to JJ McCarthy, but he has sort of just kind of fallen on hard times. It seems they haven't really been able to shorten up that throwing motion that I spoke with former OC Kurt Campbell about at the Rose Bowl. I mean, that was 18 months ago when they were talking about really shortening that motion. And I didn't see it. I mean, I'm not a total QB guru, but that's exactly what I was looking for in the spring game. It still looked pretty lengthy. And then he was something like 6 of 17 for 75 yards and 2 picks. And now Bryce did not light the world on fire either, but was certainly more dynamic, bigger arm. And Sherrone said it's not going to just be about who has the best spring, but who rallies the troops. Who do the guys look to? The quarterback is the leader of the team, right, wrong, or indifferent. And there's just sort of that intangible feel about who guys rally around. And I would give Bryce the leg up there over everybody.
It's crazy how quickly things can change. I remember when you and I were out at the Rose Bowl during Michigan's championship season, we're like, all right, get video of Davis, get the video of Davis. Oh, there he is. He's got the jersey on, right? And then now it's like, all right, well, he might be third, fourth, fifth on the depth chart here. It's crazy how quickly the college football landscape can change. But I think that's a pretty thorough breakdown of where things stand. Obviously, it's going to come down to experience versus tools, right? So we really won't know, and we might get some breadcrumbs here and there, but likely it's going to come down to if Michigan's history with Harbaugh and Moore say anything, it might come all the way down to the opening snap of the first game. That's when we found out last year. That's when we found out a lot of times with Harbaugh. So it could come right down to the first game, unfortunately, for Michigan fans. So it might be a little bit more of a wait, but the protector of the quarterback is your number 2 position to watch here, right, Tony? Left tackle, a couple names in the mix, including some highly touted prospects as well. So what are you seeing from the left tackle position? What are you hearing?
Yeah, it sounds like a 3-man race for Michigan football's most important position on the offensive line. First, and I will list him first because right now, if there were a starter right now, I would guess it would be Evan Link. He was the right tackle a season ago, said to be playing sort of out of position over there. And it showed for much of the first 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 weeks of the season. But he really turned a corner against Ohio State specifically. I mean, against Northwestern first, but then Ohio State as well. And then Andrew Sprague ended up getting the start against Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. But then there's also Blake Frazier, the son of Steve Frazier, I believe it is, who was the offensive lineman and national champion, on the 1997 team. I mean, just pedigree there, someone who was born and bred in the mold of a Michigan offensive lineman. So you just like that on its face. And last, but who the guy you were alluding to, certainly not least, Andrew Babalola. He is like Bryce Underwood, a true freshman, and also like Bryce Underwood, who was the number 1 recruit in the nation. He was a top 15 guy per 24/7 Sports consensus ranking. He was the top player in the state of Kansas, I believe it was, top 3 offensive tackle in the nation, and I think number 15 overall, regardless of position. I mean, he's every bit of 6'6", 300 pounds. And as physically imposing as he is, the first thing everybody says is no, not the cliche that, he's a better guy than he is an athlete. And I take exception to that phrase just in general, because if you say that about Bryce Underwood, I'm sure he's a wonderful person. And I really enjoyed my conversation with him when I got to meet him over the summer. Do you actually think he's even better as a human than he is as the top 1% of the 1% of all athletes? So that might be a little bit of an aside, but I just always kind of shake my head when I hear that, because it's like, no, he is 1 out of a million athletes. And maybe he's one, I'm not going to say where he is as a human, but it's hard to be better than 1 out of a million. I'm just going to say that. Anyways, back to Babalola. I mean, this guy is smart as a tack, is what they all say. Sherrone Moore made a joke. He said whenever he sees him and Grant Newsome starting to speak in the offensive line room, he just walks out. He's like 50-50. I'm not even going to understand what they're talking about. So I don't know what he's planning to declare, but I don't think it's going to be communications or general studies. That's just what it sounds like. I mean, he was considering Stanford, other really, really great programs that have the academics to match. And so the reason you bring that up is because it is so hard to be able to pick up an offense like this as a true freshman, the checks, the protections, protecting the blind side of a mobile quarterback in some ways is actually almost more difficult than a pocket passer, because right where they're going to be if they're just a true, a Jared Goff type, right? He's either working back or stepping up. But Bryce, I mean, he can flush either way. He can extend plays. So you really got to sort of have that instinct. And Babalola has only been playing for 2 years. I mean, it's really remarkable. His first official football season was as a junior in high school. And so, I mean, he has a basketball background, and you could see it sort of the footwork, the post footwork. I mean, just even when you try to watch little video clips that they'll post on social media of him doing his pass set and different things. That's just sort of what you look for. And everybody says who watches him that he's just a next level athlete. So very smart, next level athlete. You just wonder if he's a little bit too raw still at this point. So those are the three that I'd be watching, and probably put Evan Link at the top of the pecking order.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Sherrone is all for, best player out there available, but it seems a little unlikely to go starting freshman, true freshman left tackle, true freshman quarterback. That seems like a bit of a tall ask. So we'll see. Lots still to happen there, but and just like this next position we're going to talk about, it could change throughout the season, right? Nickelback is the third position you have to watch. You see it all the time in all levels of football. Like the Lions, sometimes they'll have Brian Branch playing the nickelback, and sometimes they'll have him at safety and rotating some of the other cornerbacks in there as well. So what is there to know about the nickelback competition, and could it be changing throughout the year?
That was a great setup. It absolutely could be changing throughout the year. When it felt like they were always going to have the luxury of just an elite, perfect fit at nickelback. When you go from Dax Hill to Mikey Keene still for 3 years in a row, both top, one the first round pick, one a second round pick, both who get tons of reps in the league. It just felt like they had that position really locked down. But this year, it's sort of, I would compare it to what they're saying about the offensive line. It's not just this type of person has to be in this position. They're looking for a best five. They're looking for the five who fit together best. And Sherrone said that everybody in the safety room is in the mix for that position, or is going to be taking reps there. And that could be someone like a new person like a TJ Metcalf. It could be a hard hitter like Brandon Hillman. It could even be Mason Curtis, who is 6'4". I don't know if I've ever seen a 6'4" nickelback like in the history of football. Certainly at the college level. So that would be, just different types of looks, right? Hillman, like I said, is the hitter. Metcalf is sort of the stride for stride, like the shiftier guy with the quick hips. But Mason Curtis is just lengthy. He's just long and tall and can really cover ground and just has a knack for the ball. We saw that even as a freshman. Like he was often just around the ball. So someone like that, but don't rule out even cornerbacks. Zeke Berry, he took his lumps there a little bit last year. I know they really like him on the outside, but if the best combination of five is him on the inside, they will not hesitate to put Zeke Berry back there. They said Jair Hill is going to get snaps there. That one actually surprised me. He felt sort of like the Will Johnson replacement, like that boundary corner who you just stick there and expect to lock down one receiver. But again, they're not putting any limitations on this. And that's not to mention Josiah Edmond. We'll see if Jaden Mangum can even work his way into the rotation at all this year. He was like an all Big Ten honorable mention in East Lansing 2 years ago. Couldn't even crack the field for the Wolverines last season. So, and he was dealing with a little bit of injuries, but not the whole season. So that flip a coin. You're going to need a lot of coins because there's a lot of side to that coin. Maybe roll an 8-sided dice or whatever. But that position is the one who I think that is the most up for grabs.
Yeah, and football at all levels is changing so much where it's like, if Jeremiah Smith is playing in the slot, right, Ohio State's going to move him around and maybe they'll put him in the slot for matchup purposes. Michigan's not going to be like, oh, well, stick our best guy on the outside and let Smith just go wild against whoever's in the middle, right? They're going to put the best on best to a certain degree in certain situations, So it's so fluid and it's moving around a lot, especially at nickelback. For sure. The other running back, is more, as you described it, a battle between Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall. Running backs, it's not the, bell cow era that it used to be, right? So both these guys are probably going to get looks.
They will. And I think it was Sherrone who said it's not going to be a 1-2 punch. It's going to be a 1A, 1B punch. And interestingly, like a lot of times what teams will like to do is you sort of have like a thunder and lightning back. We've heard that all the time. One guy who sort of just pounds the rock up the middle and another guy who is seen as the home run hitter. These guys are built similarly. Haynes, 5'11", 205, Marshall, 5'11", 210, but they do run a little differently. I see Haynes as the slightly shiftier, and you always got to be careful when you invoke the name of Blake Corum, but all I mean is that guy who can really put his foot in the ground, plant and switch directions behind or at the line of scrimmage. He seems to really have that, whereas Jordan Marshall, he just kind of, not that he doesn't have home run ability and not that he isn't elusive, but this guy is not afraid to run behind his pads and fall forward. He's not just a bulldozer, but I keep going back to the Alabama game last year. There was no passing game to speak of at all. Just everybody knew that Michigan was not going to pass the ball. And an offensive line that was sort of working around with some new pieces. And Jordan Marshall still ran for 100 yards against Alabama. I mean, if you're able to do that, going against consistent 7, 8, sometimes 9-man boxes. No exaggeration. I mean, what's it going to be like if there's any threat of a passing game and you finally get to see only 6 guys in the box, or God forbid 5, and then now people are going to have to respect, you would think, the run a little bit of a quarterback. Should Underwood win the job, although they're not sure if they want to run him, just protect him. I guess that's another conversation for another day. But you just like the chances better this year. And I would go out on a limb and say I think this running room is going to be better than last year's. Clone Mullings was great. Donovan Edwards was okay. He was better than the year before, but certainly not as good as his sophomore season. But Haynes and Marshall, I mean, they could be the best 1-2 or 1A, 1B punch in the Big Ten.
Quickly here, because we got to take a break before we get to the schedule and expectations for the Wolverines this fall. You have punter listed as the 5th battle. Anyone sticking out there, or you think it's going to be a race down to the wire? Yeah,
no, we'll keep this one quick. It sounds like it's going to be Hudson Hollenbeck, he was the backup last year but just never could quite crack the field, even though Tommy Doman really did struggle. But Michigan just added last week a former D2 punter, Hunter Robinson. He actually went to Berkeley High School. He's from Huntington Woods, a Metro Detroit area. And last year, he averaged 43 yards a punt, which was slightly better than Doman. And that's one of the few positions where you actually can compare apples to apples in D2 versus D1, because this is just about leg, right? Maybe guys are getting on you a little quicker, but it's not like you're going against defenders one-on-one and you got to see how your size holds up. They added, in theory, last spring, Luke Bauer from Missouri, although I have not seen an official announcement from the program, and I was looking in the university directory and he's not listed in the directory. So I'm not saying it's official, but I don't think he's on the team. That was kind of a mystery. So Hudson Hollenbeck is the lead for punter going into the season.
All right, cool. Good wrap up. We'll have plenty more positional breakdown here this coming months of the summer and into the fall. And of course, game 1 when they play New Mexico, we'll be diving into all that and who played where and what snap counts, all that good stuff. So plenty to come on that front. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to talk expectations for Michigan this season when we come back. Welcome back, and thank you for sticking with us for that quick little ad there. All right. I wanted to ask you to start this off. I'll always love to quiz you if I can. I checked FanDuel Sportsbook about 5 minutes before this podcast. Do you have a guess for what Michigan's over-under win total will be? You probably know the range, but do you know the exact number? Regular season.
Yeah, I know the range is going to be 8.5 to 9.5. But then I tell myself this is Michigan. Has a huge fan base. Lots of people like to bet it. So I'm fairly confident it's 9.5.
Ding, 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 ding. Tony wins. Yep, 9.5. So that's obviously last year Michigan went 8-5. That would not count. By these win totals, they'd be 7-5 because they only count the regular season. So Michigan would have to improve by 3 games over last year. You just talked about a lot of the reasons why they maybe could, but that whole thing got me considering, okay, what are the realistic expectations? Let's go game by game and look at how they get to 10 wins and how that bet would cash, because the schedule is interesting, maybe slightly easier than last year, I would say, in some ways, but obviously the non-conference, you have the game at Oklahoma where anything can happen. So we're going to go through these games. Obviously, let's start with New Mexico. I think we can buzz through that pretty quickly. They're going to be favored. No reason to even really break down that too much, right?
I don't think there's anything to say. Michigan's going to win. And if they don't, then they're certainly not going over 9.5.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So that's a dub.
The most interesting one, for at least for the first half of the schedule is going to be at Oklahoma. We're going to be out there. I mean, I'm jealous. You get to go see, the Sooner Stadium out there. That's going to be an awesome trip. Oklahoma's win total is set at 6.5. Michigan is 9.5, as we just discussed. Who's favored in that game?
I think Oklahoma is going to be favored by a point or by a point or 2. It might be a pick 'em. And
why?
Just because I think so. Oklahoma is not playing Purdue or Northwestern or Maryland 3 weeks in a row, right? I haven't looked at their schedule. Maybe you can pull it up real quick and sort of list off a couple of their games. But just while the Big Ten and SEC are sort of at each other's throats, it just feels like, I just feel like the bottom of the SEC is deeper than the bottom of the Big Ten. Whereas, I mean, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, I mean, they can hang with the LSUs, the Georgias, and the Alabamas these days. And Michigan, in the last recent era, you could easily throw in that mix. Obviously, they beat Alabama twice in 2024, right? So, I mean, there's no question about that. But I look at likely a true freshman making his first road start at night at Norman. I expect that's going to be college game day. I mean, the place is just going to be a snake pit. Oklahoma under Brent Venables has been down lately, and this is kind of a make or break season for him, I would say, for sure. And they turned their roster around really as well as anybody. They added John Mateer, the quarterback from Washington State. They brought his offensive coordinator with him. He might have been the best quarterback in the transfer portal this season. And then Jaden Ott, the running back from Cal, top 5 running back in the portal. So I mean, just right there, they completely revamped their offense, and that's going to be strength on strength. Michigan's defense is going to be ferocious again, as it seems to always be. But and if this game was at home, I would certainly feel differently about it. But talk about just this win total, right? And the path to 10.5 or to 10 wins, to beat 9.5. Excuse me. You win this game, and you're in the driver's seat.
You feel like you're in good shape for that, for sure. All right, so I found on Vegas Insiders, which typically is pretty accurate from when I've checked it before. According to them, the spread opened with Michigan as a 2.5 point favorite. And now on most of the apps, it's somewhere between 3.5 on BetMGM and 4.5 on FanDuel and on ESPN Bet. So Vegas likes Michigan. Michigan. Yeah. So that's interesting for sure. Maybe a little bit different than what we thought, but I can totally see where you're coming from though, right? True freshman under the bright lights and, Norman, I mean, it's just not going to be an easy game, right? So it does feel, and we'll get to why in a few minutes, because from there, you could see Michigan maybe get on cruise control a little bit. If they can get by this one and get the confidence, it's going to be so massive. It's calling it season defining. It doesn't feel like an overreaction to me.
But I would still say it's sort of a win-win. Even if you lose, that's an easily explainable loss. You want to just make sure you play well, keep the confidence up, no injuries, right? Like, that's not a game that's going to keep you out of the college football playoff because you lost it, because you scheduled an SEC team on the road, and you are both big brand names, so it's going to be under the brightest of lights. So,
but it certainly shrinks your margin for error, right? It shrinks your margin for error the rest of the way.
It does. But if you win it, like we said, driver's seat. You're in fantastic position to get back to the CFP.
Okay. So looking at the schedule, obviously we mentioned 9.5 is Michigan's win total. Michigan does not play anyone else with a win total over 9.5 for the rest of the season until they play Ohio State in the final week of the year. So there's going to be some tough ones here, and we'll go down the schedule. So Central obviously will probably, they'll be a 20 plus point favorite. That's a win. Unless, like you said, things can get disastrous. Maybe a little weirdness there because of the Connor Stallion situation. Both teams getting investigated by the NCAA. A little weirdness that certainly will be brought up during that week. But other than that, not much really to talk about there. The next one is at Nebraska, where, Michigan decimated the Cornhuskers a couple of years ago in 2023 when you were out there. They're out in the Midwest there again in Nebraska. Their win total is 7.5. So again, you expect it to be at least with the home field advantage for Nebraska. It's probably going to be relatively close, maybe Michigan by a few points, right?
Yep. This one I could see Michigan being favored. And I mean, I guess I see it against Oklahoma because there's a lot of new pieces there. I'm just a little bit surprised. But the things to keep in mind about Nebraska quickly, I was very underwhelmed in 2023. I know Nebraska was down and Michigan was at its height, but everybody on the beat who was around 2022 was my first year. And the last time they had gone was 2021. Everybody was talking about Memorial Stadium and that night game that Michigan was just able to eke out and how it was one of the best environments. Now, Nebraska notoriously has extremely nice fans. Everybody really says nothing but good things about Nebraska fans, but there was just no juice. I mean, I pulled up and I parked. I parked like directly, like almost on the field, like just outside the field, like 5-second walk. I was expecting it to be like Happy Valley, where it's like, that's the only game in town. There's going to be traffic jams everywhere. And so I was a little bit underwhelmed, but I expect it won't be like that this year. And one reason I think this game is going to be tough in particular, because at least right now, Sherrone Moore will be suspended for this game. Michigan has imposed a 2-game suspension, and that is currently set for weeks 3 and 4. Now, could that change? Yes. I mean, maybe the NCAA NCAA wants it to be a 2-game suspension, but no, you don't get to pick your games. It's the first 2 games of the season, and then he's out for Oklahoma. Then they're really in trouble for Oklahoma. Or possibly, maybe it gets extended, right? Maybe it's 4 games. You just don't know. But as of right now, as of time of recording, Sherrone Moore will not be on the sidelines for Nebraska. And that's tough. Plus, it feels like Matt Rule really has things going in the right direction there. You got Dylan Raiola, who was their sort of Bryce Underwood a year ago, right? Now he has a full season under his belt. And they just added Dana Holgorsen, a former West Virginia coach, as the new offensive coordinator. And he knows how to, that's a wonderful addition. Anytime you get an proven head coach to go back, take a step back as an OC. They also added a couple wide receivers, Nazia Hunter from Cal, who had almost 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. Dane Key from Kentucky, who had 715 yards. So there's more talent on this offense, and not an easy place to play. I would pick Michigan to win this game, but this is one of the 3 or 4 toughest games on their schedule without question.
No doubt. Okay. Next is Wisconsin, who is only listed as 5.5 win total, which I thought was a little low. I'll have to look at their schedule and see if that could be partially why, these new Big Ten schedules, SEC schedules, they're so big. It's not like as much predictability as we used to have, where it's like, you have a pretty good idea of who's everyone's playing this year. It's so wide of a range, but Wisconsin at home, I think we both think that probably should be a win, or at least a heavy favorite for Michigan, unless they come out looking totally different.
Should be a win. Wisconsin is still in this sort of turnaround from that ground and pound, biggest, baddest offensive line that you can put together to now what Luke Fickell's trying to do, which is more of a modern day offense, sort of I think they're calling it an air raid. I just can't even say that in the same sentence as Wisconsin. It makes my skin crawl. But they were able to land Billy Edwards Jr. from Maryland. That's a quarterback Michigan had a lot of interest in the transfer portal, and they sort of had to change paths to Mikey Keene. So he is dynamic. There's no doubt about it. They also added a couple wideouts as well. Jaden Ballard from Ohio State didn't do a lot with the Buckeyes, but we've seen Jamison Williams not be able to break into the Buckeyes wide receiver course, right? Especially last year with Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. Did I think they still had Carnell Tate? The years are blending together, but it's always a deep, deep room. And so there's something like that. And then here's a familiar name for some. If you go back enough in the Big Ten, Mike Tressel, the former Michigan State defensive coordinator, is the DC there. And he runs sort of that 3-3-5. And I never liked that defense against a team like Michigan that wants to run the ball. I really like Michigan's 4-2-5 multiple defense more, but 3 defensive linemen, then kind of moving a linebacker up and trying to shape shift like that. It remains to be how talented the defensive players are and how much they understand the scheme. But just on paper, I don't like that style against a team like Michigan if you're Wisconsin. So yeah, I would have Michigan winning that game.
Let's pair a couple of these together. So at USC and Washington at home. So flipping of last year where they played at Washington and USC at home. Both teams are 7.5 win totals. How do you see these 2 games going, Tony?
So earlier this offseason, I ranked like the order of difficulty of the games. Oklahoma was 2. I put Nebraska 3, USC 4, and Washington 5. Now, Washington's, I guess you just said their win total 7.5. So right at the same level as USC. But I'm telling you, under Jet Fish and their new quarterback who sort of won the job or sort of took it over last year, Damon Williams Jr., I think he could be someone who catches this league by storm this year. He completed 78% of his passes last year for 944 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 1 pick, while running for almost another 300 yards and 2 scores. This guy is super dynamic. They returned their star wide receiver, Denzel Boston. They added Amari Evans from Penn State. If Kevin Green Jr. can be healthy, who came from Arizona, that's another weapon as well. And then they got the balance with Jonah Coleman at running back, who I think is one of the 5 best running backs in the league. So there's just a lot of talent there. And if that game was in Washington again, I would expect a similar. I don't know that I could pick Michigan, but in Ann Arbor, it's just so hard to travel. I give the edge to Michigan there. If it's hard to travel, that means a road game at USC. You got to wonder about that. And Lincoln Riley just has not had it going yet at all, like people thought he would, taking over a program like that in a recruiting hotbed like that. But things possibly could turn this year. Jaden Maeva is going to be the starter for him. It looks like he started his career at UNLV, and when he was in place of Miller Moss last year, he was pretty good. Completed almost 60% of his passes, 1,200 yards, nearly a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio at 11-6. And Woody Marks is gone, but they returned their two best. He was a dynamic running back, but they returned two really good wide receivers, Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane. Now that Alex Grinch is no longer calling that defense and is under year 2 under Danton Lynn, it's just a market improvement. I was so far out on Alex Grinch 2 years ago, I can't even describe it. So there's a lot of talent. It's USC. There's going to be. I can't pick Michigan to win all these close games. So I'll pick them probably split against USC and Nebraska. I don't know if they could get both. If they do, then they're essentially in the playoff. But going all the way to USC and the way Michigan stole that game against USC last year when USC was up 4 with 2.5 minutes left and they gave up a 63-yard Kalal Mullings run on third down, I think there's probably a little bit of bad blood there. So edge to USC.
So through Washington, which is before USC, what do you think? One loss between, so you think they'll lose one game between Oklahoma, Nebraska, and USC?
I think two. I do think two. I mean, earlier this year, I could see a position where they're 3-3. I mean, those are 3 not easy games, but I don't think they lose all 3. So, I mean, 4-2 or 5-1 through the first 6, I think is where they're going to be. And that's when I think they really get on a roll once they hit mid-October.
Yep. So then after that, always, going to be a much talked about game at Michigan State. Last time was one of the biggest beatdowns in Spartan Stadium history. I think should be a more competitive game than that, but Michigan State seems to be slightly behind in the rebuild of where Michigan is for a couple of reasons. Obviously, Michigan's got the national championship to build on, program reputation, handing it off to a coach who was on the staff. It feels like they're just about a year or 2 ahead, doesn't it?
I'd say more than that. These programs just right now don't feel like they're on the same level. Last year felt like, I remember pretty much everybody on staff thought Michigan State was going to beat Michigan when Michigan was in a down year last year. And it was a close game. It was a 24-17 game. MSU had it 4th and 5 at the 16-yard line with under 2 minutes to go. And they couldn't complete it. Michigan's pass rush was too much. And also MSU had a chance to get up early, but missed a chip shot field goal and just different things. And then they actually went down into the half down 9-7. I think you play that game 100 times in the same way. Michigan might only be leading at the half once or twice. And so, but that's just the DNA of Michigan, a team that had learned to win for so long versus the DNA of Michigan State, a team that's been losing for a handful of years. I mean, that's football. That's the way it goes. And so I don't expect this one will be 49-0 in Spartan Stadium. That one would surprise me. I mean, more than surprise me, but you still, you gotta like Michigan in this spot. I think Aiden Childs gives MSU a chance. Nick Marsh gives MSU a chance, but I just don't know about that offensive line. They haven't had that. Their offensive line has kind of been in shambles for years. And you know me, if you've listened to this podcast at all, I preach about the big ugly. That's where winning football stems from. That's one reason I'm nervous about this Lions season, if we're being honest. But yeah, I got Michigan. I think
I put the phrase a year or year and a half behind because of kind of how last year's game went, where Michigan State, even with all that said, all those shooting themselves in the foot, it still came down to that last drive. Michigan State still had a chance to come down and somehow tie the game because Michigan's quarterback play was that dismal. That still has to be considered. And they were able to match up physically to the point where it wasn't, just a decimation like it was against Northwestern, right? So that's why I think you put it maybe a year or year and a half behind, but Michigan's also moving at a faster pace up as well, is what it feels like. Maybe they're a year and a half behind where Michigan was last year, right? Like maybe by the end of this year, next year, they could be there. But I just meant not a year and a half behind Michigan's trajectory with these recruiting classes and all that. So on the same page there. We could probably group these next 3 together because these are going to be 100%. Yep. Man, the win totals on these, 3.5 for Purdue. So Purdue's at home, at Northwestern, which is really going to be at Wrigley Field. They're 3.5. And then at Maryland, who, seemed to be building something. And then you lost in week 2 to Michigan State. And it seemed like that kind of just sent them in a tailspin. Their win total's only at 4.5. So we think that these 3, barring disaster or a surprise from maybe Locks has a better team down in Maryland than some of us think, these should be 3 wins for Michigan. Yeah.
The first two are absolutely wins, and the third one is a very, very, very likely win at Maryland. The only reason that it's very, very, very likely and not a lock against Loxley is because it's the game before Ohio State. And I've gone to SECU Stadium and I've seen Maryland give better Michigan teams every bit of what they could offer. Now, Maryland was better as well, but I think Loxley's kind of on the hot seat this year. He led them to 3 straight winning seasons. That was the first time Maryland had done that since 01 to 03. And then they went 4-8. He's been there for 6 years. If there's another 4-8 season coming, or they miss a bowl game again, they might move on from him and the former Alabama OC experiment. So yeah, I mean, I don't see Maryland beating this team, especially Michigan is often humming late in the year. It's usually weather is playing a factor. It's cold or snowy or a little rainy. And those are the games Michigan loves to play. Not these shootouts on track, on turf, but just the game's played in tight. It's played near the line of scrimmage. And that's where Michigan is better than almost every team in America.
All right. Last but not least, you guys know the game. Michigan, Ohio State in Ann Arbor this year. No matter what, I think, Ohio State could be 1-11 and Michigan could be 11-1 or vice versa. After the way last year's game went down, there's no way this game is not going to be crazy hyped up as it always is. And Ryan Day is going to be the talking point. He's got to get over that mental block that seems to be there, because he proved himself as a capable football coach in the playoff by winning the national championship. That's impossible to argue, but how is he able to get over this hump against Michigan is going to be the talking point. Obviously, Ohio State expect to be very good again, 10.5 win total, but I think you figure that Ohio State will probably be favored even with the recent history just because of the overwhelming amount of talent on that team. But I mean, it's going to be impossible to ignore the recent history in the rivalry.
Yeah, this feels like the toughest one to predict. And I like a lot of people call it a mental block against Michigan, and maybe it is, but a lot of it is just these styles. The styles of the way they play. Ohio State is that speed and space. They like to run and gun. They will run it, but it's just kind of a raw talent and do everything. Whereas when you're playing in Ann Arbor or in Columbus on November 30th, it's going to be cold. There's going to be wind. There might be snow. And we saw it. We've seen that play a factor. I mean, in 2021, when Michigan finally broke the streak, it looks like a snow globe, right? I mean, I remember being on the field in 2022 in Columbus and last year, frankly. And the reason I'm kicking myself for it because it ended up being an unbelievable entrance video. It was so freezing cold on the field down there. I was like, I'm recording the team walking onto the field from the press box. I mean, it is an ice box down here. So Ohio State they were nullified with what they could do passing wise. But I mean, the last two national champions facing off against one another, the number one, if not number two up here, we always call it the number one rivalry in all of college football. I mean, this is what football is all about. There's a chance either of these teams could have lost a game, possibly two before this. This might be for a college football playoff berth for one of them. I would not rule that out.
Or a Big Ten title game berth. Well, which, obviously plays a factor.
No, for sure. With Oregon, with Ohio, with Penn State, and then possibly Illinois' easy schedule. I mean, it's just going to be, Michigan's going to can only lose one game to get to the title game. I mean, that's true about everyone.
Well, I mean, we also said that they could lose or if they beat Oklahoma, or lose to Oklahoma, that could change where their positioning is too. If they one of their losses happens to be to the Sooners instead of Nebraska, that probably plays better for them getting back, right? Because you're one loss in the Big Ten, you have a better chance of making the title game. They don't play Penn State or Oregon, which is, a massive break.
Yep. No doubt about it. So right now, I mean, I'd been saying last year, I remember after the game, I think I came on this podcast and I said, no matter what, next season, I am picking Michigan because because I think out of the last 3 years, I only picked Michigan to win one of them. And so 1 and 2 in those picks, don't like that feeling. So I'm like, Ohio State is going to have to prove me wrong. Yet here I sit, and it's just difficult to pick Michigan to win that game. But I'll do it right now. I will. No, I won't, because I really see Michigan finishing 9-3 somehow, some way. So Oklahoma and Ohio State I have as the probable losses, and then splitting USC and Nebraska. So right at 9-3. Could they get to 10? Certainly. I mean, any of those three losses, I don't see them getting blown out in any of those games. If there was one, I think it would be Oklahoma, just because of the circumstance and the time in the season. But Michigan could go 10-2. And if they are 10-2, they will be back in the college football playoff. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
I mean, Ohio State could be a buzzsaw this year.
But they're breaking in a new quarterback too. It's probably going to be Julian Sayin. We don't know. And they just lost 14 NFL draft picks, 4 first rounders. I mean, there is a ton of talent to replace over there too. That's why, and it's in Ann Arbor. So you like all of that for Michigan.
But I mean, it's like Alabama back in the day with Nick Saban, right? Where it's like you win the national title, you're Ohio State, you have guys to fill in there, right? And they still have Downs, they still have Jeremiah Smith, who may be the 2 most like talented players in all of college football, right? So it's hard to argue with the talent level in Columbus. And it's so weird because you mentioned the mental block and the burst style of play. Look what Ohio State did against Tennessee in a night game, 3 weeks later or 2 weeks later, or whatever it was, in the first round of the college football playoff. They erased them in cold weather. Obviously Tennessee is not from, the same making as Michigan, right? But they're clearly, it's not like a cold weather thing. They can't deliver. It's not that simple. So who knows? I mean, it feels almost like when an NBA player gets that ring and gets over the hump, and then it's like, oh, wow, you got nothing to hold against me now, right? That kind of feels like, is that going to be in play for Ryan Day this year? Will we see a new confidence, a new swagger from that team in this rivalry where it's like they have the championship, what are you going to say now type element? But then at the same time, you got to do it. You got to deliver, right?
This is what Michigan's going to say. They're going to say 4 in a row. You haven't beat us since before COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, it's been 6 years since Ohio State. I mean, Michigan's got a lot to say. I mean, the fact that Ohio State has to continue to bring up that they are the national champs.
I mean, that's not really a sick burn. They're like, you have to bring up the national championship. Of course, they're going to bring that up.
Yeah, no, of course. But I'm saying
if the tables were turned and Michigan
they are
beaten,
bothered. They are bothered by what's happened. There's no doubt about it.
No, but it's funny because for a 100% fact that if Michigan had won the national championship and lost 4 straight to Ohio State and vice versa, the 2 fan bases would be using the exact opposite arguments that they're currently using because that's just how college football works. And it's kind of beautiful and ugly all at the same time. So, all right. Well, as Tony said, we expect somewhere in the 9-3, 10-2 range. Going through it, my takeaway is Big Ten slate might be a little easier than the last few years, certainly. I mean, as far as avoiding Oregon, avoiding Penn State, and avoiding Illinois, and Indiana, you're doing pretty well there, and you got to deliver. So lots to watch for. We'll be breaking it down in the coming weeks. I'm sure this won't be the last time we discuss the schedule because it's such a huge factor of college football today, especially with these mega conferences and how the games get split up. So plenty more conversation about that and other topics, guests, lots to look forward to on Hail Yes in the coming weeks and months here. So with that, we'll probably sign off for the week. Can't wait to get back. Honestly, I'm pumped. This has been so fun, Tony. Quit talking college football here again with you.
Yeah, we said we were going to do 30 to 45. We never do 30 to 45. We'll get it dialed in. It's because we love this stuff. No, it's on me. I'm long-winded. I'll tighten it up. We'll tighten the screws.
Really? Tony, long-winded?
Yeah. Thanks, bud.
All right. Well, thank you as always to our bosses, Nicole Avery Nichols, Bill Bradley, the sports editor, and the person who, basically is the backbone of all of our audio, Robin Chan, the man, the myth, the legend, who holds it all down for us. So with that, we'll talk to you guys soon, and thanks for sticking with us this long.